Well, we are back for our impromptu round 3. For behind the scenes, I literally just hit the pause button, but I didn't want you all to drown on all that information that was so good last week. So if you're just joining for the first time, we have 2 episodes the prior 2 weeks with an amazing conversation with Lee Carroll, and we're talking all things mushrooms, why they're important in your practice, the history, his top 5 mushroom picks, which was like mind-blowing. And so for this round 3, I promise we're done after this one. I promise. But this part 3, round 3, we're going to talk about quality issues in the marketplace. And so you're going to want to pay attention because I just asked Lee before we hit this record button. I said, so is there anything else you want to talk about? And he said, pretty sure quality issues are going to take up about the whole thing. So let's do this. I want to hear. Tell us a little bit about mushrooms in the marketplace and what we should look for and what we need to look out for.
Yeah, it's a minefield. So clearly I've had a lot of good training with all my MediHerb years around quality, and quality was the central plank in the whole message. So once I started putting my mind to the mushroom thing, I had that same imprint. Like I was really aware of all of the quality stuff, and I was just aghast at the poor quality offerings that are being promoted and the departure from tradition, which is being put up as the modern way to do mushrooms. So it's scandalous. So let's get started with the details, hey?
I'm ready.
The kingdoms of life did tell us what name we use to describe the organisms that are part of that kingdom. So the kingdom Plantae has got plants in it. The kingdom Animalia has got animals in it. And the kingdom Fungi has got fungi in it. So fungi is plural and fungus is singular. So the organism that is the fungus isn't a mushroom. And the mushroom is the fruiting body of the organism. And the fruiting body is the above ground part. Sometimes they're below ground, like poria and truffles are good examples of that, for example. So it's the fruiting body which has got all of the tradition around it. It's what early humans ate, and all of the grand traditions that use mushrooms as medicine. So there's mostly that's the Asian tradition, but there is Hippocrates was recommending some mushrooms as antiseptic washes and styptic wads for wounds and that sort of thing. So all of the tradition is built up around using mushrooms as the medicine. So in the pharmaceutical world, many mushrooms deliver very highly specific beta glucan. So there might be 40 or 50 beta glucans in a mushroom. So in shiitake, there's might be 59 of them, but one of them called lentinan, when you purify it, it's got really amazing potential to deal with gastric cancer. So it's a drug in that sense, or in our herbal medicine world, it's a 50-to-1 extract of shiitake that's really good as an adjunct in cancer treatment. So companies don't use mushrooms to get that molecule. They use liquid culture techniques where they grow the fungus in a liquid medium. So fungi are like humans. They need oxygen. They need to consume food. So in that liquid environment, they pump some oxygen in so that the mycelium can grow, but it never produces fruiting bodies. So the mycelium is different to the fruiting body, although they're made up of the same kind of stuff. But it has different chemical signatures. It has different molecules. So that technique is what's used to make these very highly specialized molecules. So in clinic, I use turkey tail PSK in my cancer treatments, for example, and that's how that's made. So that's a legitimate source of those molecules. And cordyceps, the Chinese cordyceps, you can't harvest it in the wild because it's very extremely endangered. So it's a bit technical, but they grow cordyceps in that same way and then make an extract from that mycelium as a substitute for the sclerotium fruiting body complex. That's the traditional medicine. But now in this kind of just in the last 15 years, companies are selling what they call myceliated grain, where they take brown rice, they cook it up, they inoculate it with some fungal spores, and then the fungal spores, just like tempeh, the fungus grows through the rice,
Right.
and then it doesn't ever produce a fruiting body, and then that material gets freeze dried and then ground up and put in a capsule and sold as a mushroom product.
What?
And it's not a mushroom product. It's a fermented grain which
Oh,
has
bummer.
no evidence and no tradition and just a lot of hype. So anywhere
Wow.
where you see mycelium being used and there's grain associated with it,
Hard
it
no.
I don't recommend you use it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's two in vitro studies that are very poorly done, which don't really tell you much. There's two animal studies which go back in time and weren't focused on this concept. They were trying to improve the milk quality in sheep, and they were trying to look at immune function in chickens. And there's one case history that's been reported, famous case of breast cancer with turkey tail. That's the sum total of the evidence. You can compare that to at least 5,000 years of recorded human history from a medicine using the fruiting body.
Right. Right.
And the fact that there's at least 20,000 research papers on beta glucans, there's more than 200 clinical trials supporting mushrooms and beta glucans human health. And then some bright spark has a good idea, and all of a sudden just about every product that's being sold in the US is a
Yeah.
myceliated grain
Yeah.
product.
Yeah.
And it possibly is a bit technical, but mycelium is about 90% water and brown rice is about 50% water when you cook it. So when you grow the mycelium in the brown rice, not all of the brown rice gets converted into mycelium. So the conversion rates at the very, very best are around 35%. Some people
Oh,
in
wow.
industry that I talk to say it's more like 10%. So
Wow.
even at 35%, giving these organizations the benefit of the doubt,
Right.
in a 1,000 milligrams of the product, often they get 500 milligrams twice a day as the dose. So 1,000 milligrams of this dried myceliated grain only contains approximately 97 milligrams of dried mycelium, just because mycelium's 90% water. When you
Right.
dry it,
Right.
you got a lot less. So when you do the mathematics on it, you're getting a fraction of what you need, and the chemistry is not the same. So reishi mycelium doesn't have all of the triterpenes in it that the fruiting body does. So I didn't put reishi in my top 5 in the last podcast. Probably would come in 6th in that category. But reishi is like a medicinal plant. It's very high in secondary metabolites,
Yeah.
and the triterpenoids keep your cardiovascular system healthy, and
Right.
they get converted by bowel flora into beneficial metabolites. So there's these companies sell their products as a low bitterness reishi as if that's some sort of benefit. But when you make a mycelium, it doesn't have the quantity or the diversity of those triterpenes. So every example that you look at, there's a very significant weakness that sets the alarm bells off, and you just should not be using mycelium in clinic unless it's that submerged culture with those highly specific molecules, or
Right.
mushrooms that you can't get, like the cordyceps.
Right. So that being said, then, if we're looking at labels, we're all trained to read these labels well.
Yeah.
MediHerb's done a good job training us. So if we're looking at a label, is the only thing that we're going to spot on the label is the mycelium extract that has some kind of grain in it, or is there some other thing that we should be looking out for in these products?
There's a few tricks that get used. Some of them are really scandalous.
Well, the first one is scandalous enough.
Yeah, well, it's probably worse with the labeling. When on social media, which is where we get all of our advertising these days,
Yeah.
none of us watched
Yeah.
TV
Yeah.
much, and it's
Yeah.
always cable or whatever, and you don't get ads. So there's rules around what you can say on a label and what you can't. So the FDA has always had a rule that you need to label if it's mycelium, you got to label it as mycelium. Well, the big companies that have been selling these products, they've only started putting mycelium on their label recently. They used to call it mushroom previously. And then on the label, so if you see mycelium on the label, that's a big no.
Big red
Or if
flag.
you see fermented grain, but these companies use bright, shiny images of all the fruiting bodies. So you'll see bright, shiny images of reishi and cordyceps and beautiful images of shiitake. Well, that's legally allowed, but the subliminal message is you're consuming the fruit
You're
body.
getting the true fruiting body. Yeah.
You're not getting you're getting the mycelium instead. So companies are allowed to put mushroom in their name, even though they only ever sell mycelium products. So if company XYZ mushrooms, then that can be really prominent on the label, even though they're selling mycelium products. So these tricks are really quite sneaky. And then a good quality product will have the levels of beta glucans underneath the mushroom. So it'll say shiitake, it'll give you the Latin name, and then it'll say the mushrooms used. And then a good product will have beta glucans. Really good products will say that there's less than 5% starch. So if you use starch as a filler, then the tests that get done can be tricked into believing that there's beta glucans in there. So there's testing methodologies that need to be done.
Criminal.
It's awful.
Yeah.
They're the main things on the label. And then and I take you through all this in the course, but if you're trained to ask a few questions of the company or the rep, like, do you use the fruiting body or do you use the mycelium? So some companies, they're very obtuse around the bits that they use. So they might use the word primordium. So when you're growing the mycelium in the grain, the primordia are the embryonic kind of fruiting bodies. So some companies will let it get to that stage as if to try and trick you into thinking the primordiums is like slightly different.
Thing. Yeah.
It's basically the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. But if your company can answer the questions, like mushrooms should be organic, because most mushrooms come out of China, and we need to ensure that they're good quality. So there's a lot of fear around China, but China's the best place to get mushrooms. It's the country that is the OG, like they're the originators of the concept. So they're the ones that know how to grow it best. So as long as the growing conditions are done organically and there's vertical integration in the organization, so that the company is directly contracting with the people that grow it, that's best practice, and that's how it should be done. But many companies are just buying mushroom extracts on the open market, and they're not doing the right quality testing. But in the last show, we talked about ergothioneine. We didn't talk about ergosterol or ergosterol. So because humans and fungi share a common ancestor, many of our cellular features are the same. So part of the magic around why mushrooms have such profound effects is because of that similarity. So we have cholesterol, mushrooms have ergosterol. So ergosterol is a bunch of molecules which can be converted into vitamin D, but our body uses ergosterol to help manage lipids and help deal with liver stuff.
Wow.
So ergothioneine and ergosterol are found in known quantities in mushrooms, and each species of mushroom has got its own kind of signature. So if you look at the levels of ergothioneine and ergosterol in the product, it can tell you whether it's from an authentic source or not. Because if the ergothioneine levels are really tanked or not, even not there, the mushroom hasn't been used in the right quantity. So suppliers would be able to answer those questions. Asking how they were extracted. These mycelium products are typically just freeze dried and then given to people. And there's such a trend away from consuming grains. I can't believe that people would be willingly consuming uncooked.
That's what I was going to say.
grain.
I was going to say, like, we're telling patients to get away from grains, but yet the products have got the grains in them. And then you even have a poor product that you're not even getting what you think you're going to be getting in the way of mushrooms. So again, back to real mushrooms, you're saying that the quality is there. They've tested it. They are using the fruity bodies. And then
Yeah.
they're drying that, correct? And then putting in a capsule.
And then they're extracting it. Yeah. So they do an extract like you boil up the mushroom in either water or ethanol or dual solvents. You do water first and then ethanol
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
And then you dehydrate that extract and then you dry it into a powder. But real mushrooms also have a 1-in-1 extract where they take the mushroom, they boil it in water, and then they filter off the mushroom and they filter off the extract. They concentrate the extract and dry it. They dehydrate the mushroom and they combine them back together. So
Oh,
it's kind of
wow.
like an activated mushroom. So it's the whole mushroom like ready to go. So in terms of whole food principles, there's no loss. Everything is there, and that's become kind of like my preference. I
Mm.
don't have access to it yet in Australia, but once it's available online sales, I'm going to be using it. It's the very best way to do it because you don't lose anything. Everything's there.
Right.
All the ergothioneine, all the ergosterol, all the fiber. And tremella is a good example. Tremella, when you get 3 grams of tremella mushroom and then boil it in 7 ounces of water for 2 hours. Obviously, I do a big batch. You wouldn't boil such a small amount, but it goes thick and gooey. So I got 3 grams of real mushrooms tremella and put it in warm water and stirred it and let it sit for 2 hours. And it made the liquid go the same amount of goo as
Really?
the dried mushroom did. So
Well,
it's
that was what I was thinking earlier when you were talking about the psyllium and the grain, is that some of the huge benefits of the mushrooms is the impact on the gut and the
of the
fiber and the
fiber. Yeah,
yeah, and then you don't get any of that.
you
So
don't get any of that.
for
Yeah.
me, that's huge. That's a huge missing piece. Not to mention all the other stuff, the polyphenols and the brain and the skin and all the things. But
Yeah,
the fact that we're missing out on that core fundamental piece. And it's also fascinating to me that if mushrooms have been part of our diet, like ancestrally, our diet, part of the culture, isn't it fascinating that all of the mushrooms have a positive prebiotic like benefit on the gut? So even in the ecosystem, that those fruiting bodies, that the fungi that we would naturally have been eating as we're gathering and foraging through looking for food, was helping to repair, remodel, and support a healthy gut bacteria. That's just fascinating to me.
yeah. We're so interconnected with the natural world, and
Yeah.
mushrooms, I think, are kind of like one of the missing pieces. They're just not well enough appreciated. Yeah. And
Wow.
my fear, and I've seen this in my long herbal medicine career, the whole population is energized around the magic of mushrooms. So there's all of the psychedelic stuff, which is a totally different sphere. But all of this medicinal stuff, like this is colliding with the modern consciousness, and everybody's just switched on to the benefits that mushrooms can give. So
Mhm.
people are using en masse these myceliated grain products. And a couple of years down the track, people are going to say, I tried it and it just didn't
Didn't
work. It was a
work.
waste of money. And they'll
Yeah.
give up on mushrooms. And then the whole tradition suffers because then you can't get people's confidence back. And
Right.
I've seen it. Look how hard it is with echinacea. Like the quality story around echinacea, people still to this day think that echinacea is useless, and
Right.
it's only kind of a minority of the practitioner population that gives it the due respect that it deserves.
Yeah,
So
and
there's
we see that with like, so you'll go to a doctor and the doctor will say, or even some other practitioners will just say, well, herbs don't work. And I would probably kind of agree with that if they're just the kind you buy at
yeah,
Costco or the
yeah,
grocery
and
store or whatever. They
CVS,
don't
yeah,
work. That's exactly right. So
yeah,
carving out, I think it clinically carving out, you're putting your stake in the ground and carving out your own unique niche as being someone who can use mushrooms, use them medicinally, get the therapeutic benefit, see the change in the patient. I would think for
yeah,
women, which is
yeah,
80% of our practices, you start giving women tremella,
yeah,
they're going to be your patient forever because you're going to make them look beautiful. Their
yeah.
skin is
It's
better, the
true.
elastin is
Yeah,
better, the collagen is better. So if you can find a place as kind of a, I like to think about it as an entry point or we're addressing a problem that the patient either has or maybe they don't have, but you can provide a benefit for them. I think this is a niche, really a niche market that practitioners can take that's only going to elevate your credibility of your business, your brand,
Yeah.
you as the clinician, but also going to generate more revenue, make your practice more profitable, and so on. So I have a
It's
bottle of, I was looking for it here. I have a bottle here sitting somewhere of a mushroom, might be in my drawer. And I think it's is there one from Real Mushrooms that's for cognition? I think it's in a,
uh
I think it's in a white bottle. I might have taken it home.
yeah, all
But
the bottles are white.
oh,
Yeah, I'm not familiar with
well,
the details of the
I've been
brand. Yeah.
taking it and I have to I got to tell you this is like my story. So I somebody sent me some mushroom, these are from Real Mushrooms. And so there were a few bottles. And so the one for cognition, I jumped right out at me. I'm like, yeah, baby, we need this to be
Yeah.
firing really, really well. And so I looked at the label and it just said one. I think it said one capsule. And I thought, I'm not taking one, I'm taking five. And and my first dose with those five, and I don't remember what I was doing. I think I was just on a consult call or something. And my brain was like, and I didn't feel hyperactive or wound up or anything, but I mean, it was like clicking,
Yeah.
majorly clicking. And I thought, oh man, I am a believer all the way. It was
Yeah. No,
amazing. It was
it is
amazing.
it is profound. I don't think everyone would necessarily have that same like impact, but everybody over time sees a benefit.
Yeah.
Then there's so many curious things about the health benefits with mushrooms that you don't expect. I use tremella, as I said it, maybe it was that last podcast. I use it quite a lot in skin conditions,
Yeah.
and but not always. So I'll give it to some patients and say, "This is for your brain. Like it's going to make your brain work better." And then 3 weeks later, I'll see them and I'll say, "Oh, how you doing?" And I'll say, "Oh, how's your skin?" And they'll be like, "Oh my God, my
Oh.
skin's fantastic. It's never been this good." And they'll be like, "What have you done to me?" I'm like, "Oh, I think it might be the tremella."
Knowing full well that
Knowing
that's
full well that that's the
exactly what's
plan.
going to happen. But it makes you
Yeah.
look like a rock star
Yeah.
because then you
And
can pull that out of your hat and go, "Oh, I think it's that one."
exactly.
Mhm.
And my white hair is going black. I've got I used to think I was just imagining it. It was just wishful thinking, but I've been taking photographs now and I'm getting regrowth of black hairs. When a white hair falls out, I'm getting a black one in its place.
No
So,
kidding.
and I've been taking the same herbs I've always taken, and the only new thing in my regime in the last 3 years is mushrooms. So
So
there's something.
what's your mushroom for anti-gray then?
Yeah, I don't know. It might be reishi, it might be chaga. I mean, I do
Uh,
them all every day. So,
yeah. So you're not
uh,
taking anything specific, but you're just interesting that it's changing something, changing
yeah, well,
physiology.
it's.
Yeah.
I think it might be the chaga. So there's lots of examples of stress-induced white
Yeah.
hairs.
Yeah.
I started going white when I was 20, but so there's something in the mushroom that's re-energizing those melanin-producing cells that make the hair. So
Yeah.
chaga is a natural source of melanin, and
Oh,
it's
interesting.
in a soluble format. And melanin is significantly prebiotic, but melanin's got all of these really curious protective and anti-stress
Yeah.
properties,
Yeah. Yeah.
which make it quite unique. So chagas are a very low dose, 1 gram a day for the rest of your life, kind of things are
Yeah.
really nice option for people.
Well, Lee, I have to say, I am wiser, much wiser. I feel my brain is extremely full. For those of you listening, this is part 3. But if you don't know this, we've literally just recorded all 3 parts in one sitting, hence the same clothing every time. And so my brain I got all of this to digest here like really fast. I feel like I need to go and take a nap now. But Lee, thank you so much. I appreciate your
My pleasure.
generosity. And
Yeah.
you have been such a champion, not only in the world of herbal medicine, but you have trained thousands and thousands and thousands of us over the years here in the US. And I've had the pleasure of going and hanging out with you and some of the MediHerb team in Australia. And I count it a great honor to have known you and know you, and to be watching your growth, your
Oh,
journey here.
thanks,
And now
Rhonda. That's
you're
very
in
kind of
mushrooms.
you.
And I'm so thrilled to have you on, and thank you for your time and your
Mm,
contribution to us as clinicians. So
my
I know you're going to
pleasure.
be over here in the US again
June?
in June. So yeah,
Yeah.
June of 2023. So yeah, let me know and I will definitely get that out to my community, and we will see if we can stalk you a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great to be back.
Well, thank you again. I so
My
appreciate your
pleasure.
time. All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks, Rhonda.